Pope Sylvester II, also known as Gerbert of Aurillac, was a pope from 999 to 1003 AD and is renowned for being one of the most scholarly popes in medieval history. Before his consecration as pope, he was born in the 940s in the Duchy of Aquitaine in southwestern France, to a rather humble beginning as a peasant son that got admitted into a monastery at an early age. Of humble descent, Gerbert had been admitted to the Abbey of St. Gerbert of Aurillac in Auvergne as a child. He would grow up in the Abbey of St. Gerbert of Aurillac, where he would live as a monk, and through various fortunate events, Gerbert was allowed to travel and study in Catalonia, which was under influence from the Islamic civilization of Al-Andalus, being right at the border region, and also in Al-Andalus proper. There he encountered advanced learning in mathematics, astronomy and philosophy. Gerbert studied initially directly under the direction of the Bishop Otto of Vic, some 60 kilometers north of Barcelona, just outside of Al-Andalus, the area having been recently conquered by the Franks just a century before. He would later also study and learn from various Muslim scholars later when he was in Seville and Cordoba. During his stay in Spain, he studied at Barcelona and also, it would seem, under Arab teachers at Seville and Cordoba, and made unusual progress in mechanics and natural science. Through his studies, Gerbert became familiar with Arabic numerals, the astrolabe, and other scientific knowledge from the Islamic world, which he helped introduce or popularize into Western Europe. Things such as the Arabic Abacus, Hindu Arabic digits, and some other things were entirely new for the Western world. But Gerbert also reintroduced a lot of Latin and Greek texts and knowledge as well, which were present in the Islamic world, but was not present in the Western European world since the fall of the Roman Empire, as those texts and knowledge had been lost with the fall of the empire. Some context for this is that the Islamic world was during this time the world's center of civilization, knowledge and learning. And in comparison, Western Europe was a complete backwaters during this time. And people like Gerbert traveled to the Islamic world in order to learn, in order to get knowledge. Because traveling to the Islamic world in order to get knowledge was the medieval equivalent of what is done today, with a lot of people from the Middle East and elsewhere in the Islamic world traveling to the Western world to get a good education. And Gerbert had been offered a golden opportunity for a young man of a meager background like Gerbert's to travel to the Islamic world and learn there. Now it might be surprising for some of you that Gerbert, who was a monk, was interested in visiting the Islamic world in order to study there. But it is actually not that surprising when you consider that monks and other Christian men of religion were the learned men of Europe by definition, and they would, despite their rather opposed religiosity, be the most likely to actually learn from the knowledge of the Islamic world, to have an interest to study the knowledge that existed in the Islamic world, as you were supposed to be knowledgeable about matters also outside of direct religion as a man of the church. Now, of course, not every man of the church approved of studying in the Islamic world due to the religious difference between Islam and Christianity and the risk for getting corrupted, as they saw it, due to exposure to Islam and due to exposure to the knowledge that was produced in the Islamic world in, for example, Al-Andalus, that was viewed with a lot of suspicion as being not good knowledge, but rather something of the devil, as corrupting knowledge from the devil. And in fact, Gerbert faced, before he became a pope, but also after he became Pope Sylvester II, a lot of criticism for having studied in Al-Andalus. As the future pope was dubbed a necromancer, and it was gravely asserted that he had entered into a compact with the devil, bartering his salvation for high worldly estate and unholy knowledge. And these were common accusations during the time of Gerbert, because the knowledge coming from Al-Andalus and the greater Islamic world was seen as being corrupt, as something evil and dangerous and threatening, since it came from Muslims, from non-Christians, and thus was considered as a sort of unholy knowledge coming from the devil, as it was imagined that the Muslims were in league with the devil, together with other groups such as the Jews. And anyone that associated with and or learned from the Muslims was considered with a lot of suspicion and accused of being in league with the devil himself. And Gerbert faced these accusations during his lifetime. But these accusations also lingered for a lot of time, also after his lifetime. As the famous monk William of Malmesbury from 1095 to 1143, a century later, also mentions these accusations in his views describing the Pope, Sylvester II. As according to William, Gerbert went to Servide, where they studied divination and enchantment according to their custom. And Gerbert, even more than 100 years later, was still depicted as being associated with sorcery and devil-related activities. And this is clear in William's descriptions about Gerbert or Pope Sylvester II and his visit to Al-Andalus, and how he lodged with a Saracen philosopher who sold his knowledge and provided Gerbert with books to copy, except for one volume into which he had written all his arts, unable to win his teacher's trust with flattery, promises, or bribes. Gerbert seduced this man's daughter and persuaded her to help him get his teacher drunk and steal the book from under the man's pillow. Once he had escaped with the book, he called up the devil with incantations and agreed to pay homage to the devil forever if the devil would protect him from his teacher's vengeance. Once Gerbert had mastered the dark arts contained in his teacher's grimoire, he had few scruples about using this intellectually and morally abhorrent wisdom for personal gain. His elevation to the bishopric of Ravenna and the papacy were a direct result of his unholy contract, as he pressed for his own preferment with the assistance of the devil. Not satisfied with gaining mere power, Gerbert once used his diabolical knowledge to attain personal wealth, using his necromantic arts to unearth buried treasure. Here Gerbert is described as a thief, as a sorcerer, as someone that has made a contract with the devil, and through this contract manages to get the power of the bishopric and later the papacy. If we exclude and look away from any of the other reasons as to why you would want to attack Sylvester II as a pope, we for example disregard his later church politics, and we only look at the rhetorical expressions here that these accusations form. Accusations like these, made by William and earlier, were made due to the fact that there was a great fear and suspicion towards people that had studied in Al-Andalus, and thus it is reflected in the accusations against Gerbert or Pope Sylvester II, as he is depicted as having learned evil sorcery from this Saracen, this Arab Muslim. And these rhetorical attacks in the form of these accusations, as well as the general suspicion against the Islamic world, need to be considered in a greater context. Because for most Europeans during the Middle Ages, the Islamic world represented the foreign other, the powerful enemy that threatened to take over. Ever since the 7th century, the Islamic world had taken over most of the Middle East and North Africa and the Iberian Peninsula, areas that before had belonged to various Christian political entities. Muslims and the domain where Islam was practiced seemed as this giant non-Christian threatening entity, as the other, the threatening hated enemy that had invaded and was threatening further invasion always, but also at the same time the one with strange knowledge and advancement over the Europeans during this age. So there existed a duality here, in that you wanted to study the knowledge that existed in the Islamic world. But on the other hand, it was also this threatening world at the same time. And there was also this fear of this world corrupting people by the knowledge contained therein. Like this world seduces you away from the true Christian faith. And there was also fears that people that had studied in Al-Andalus or elsewhere in the Islamic world would turn into puppets that followed the will of the Muslims, which was seen as the will of the devil. So basically the accusations against Pope Sylvester II of being in league with the devil after having studied in Al-Andalus are a sort of conspiracy theory about the Pope being compromised due to Muslim influence upon him. Yes, the early medieval period had conspiracy theories too. But despite these theories and accusations, Gerbert still managed to become a pope due to his learned expertise during his study in Al-Andalus that gave him a lot of prestige that he could use to get high positions, and his generally charismatic and pious attitude despite his associations with the Islamic world, and also due to various political reasons too, as he did have powerful backers like Otto III, the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, who Gerbert actually was a teacher for a period, as Gerbert had become well known for being a very well learned man and gotten a lot of credit for bringing a lot of this knowledge from Al-Andalus into more common knowledge in the Western world. As Gerbert wrote a lot of writings about what he had learned, making that knowledge available for a Western European audience, as it previously had only been available in Arabic. And this also shows another side of having studied in the Islamic world during this era, and that was that it did not only bring shame, but it could also, depending upon the case, bring enormous prestige to have done so. And talking about prestige, while Gerbert was not the first to travel to the Islamic world in order to learn the knowledge there, he is among the first great names that did so, and his scholarly achievements made him an influential figure in bridging the intellectual gap that existed between the Christian Western European world and the Islamic world. And that was Gerbert, later Pope Sylvester II, the Pope that studied in Al-Andalus, and now put in a greater context. And I hope you liked this video. Please comment and ask questions in the comment section, and I will try to respond to you as quickly as possible. Please do subscribe, as it would help the channel spread awareness about the humanities.
اشتركوا بالقناة من فضلكم.